Tonight on Philly Sports Spotlight, the ageless wonder stepping back into the ring as 48-year-old Bernard Hopkins preps for his upcoming bout with 31-year-old Tavoris Cloud. And speaking of rings, it's fight night for the WWWA as we take you behind the scenes of the Worldwide Wrestling Alliance. Also, what's it like to be 15 and on top of the tennis world? Hello there, I'm Phil Anderson. Once again, welcome to our show, Philly Sports Spotlight. And tonight we kick things off with a focus on the sweet science. And for those of you who cannot simply visualize what I'm verbalizing, we're talking boxing. But can't do that without a little help from one of my boxing peeps. During his 16-year professional career, he had over 50 fights in the super middleweight division, where he won 40 bouts, 28 of those by knocking his opponent out to go along with 11 losses. Folks, please welcome to the set, Charles the Hatcher Brewer. And guess what? He's one of Philly's finest. I mean, you're from a long line of boxers. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having
Now,
me.
listen, I got to ask you, okay, boxing. I give you a lot of credit for stepping in the ring and having to take another man up one-on-one, but what was it like 16 years, spending 16 years beating somebody else up?
The way that I've always defined my career is it was the utmost adrenaline rush that an individual can have. I enjoyed every single moment of my career, and I enjoyed it, truly. If I could do it all over again, I certainly would.
You really would, huh? Now, his video here of you taking on Harold Graham.
Yeah, and you know what? That fight, when individuals ask me what was my most complicated fight, that there would be it. What most people don't know, in the third round of that fight, I got knocked down by Harold Graham straight left hand. I tore 2 ligaments in my right ankle as a result of that. And upon my victory, I pretty much dropped because I was hurting really, really bad from that injury. And as the rounds progressed, I was getting more and more anxious because I wanted to land that shot and end the fight.
Well, you talked about it. You know, when you have adrenaline working for you, you don't feel pain because you're so focused on what you're doing. That's probably what you were going through, right?
Absolutely.
And then at the end, it was just like exhale and you get me out of the ring, right?
Absolutely. That's exactly what happened. I knew the victory was there. I had won. I had successfully defended my title. Fight was over. Okay, now reality comes into play, and here comes the pain. I dropped. I was picked up and put on the stretcher and taken to the hospital.
But you left the ring victorious.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's good. That's what
absolutely.
we like. That's what we like to hear. Listen, as I said earlier, you come from a long line. There's been a lot of great boxers that have come out of Philly. And this weekend, one of your boxing brethren, the ageless bull, or aging bull as they're calling him now, B-Hop, Bernard Hopkins, is going to step back into the ring up in Brooklyn. He's 48 years old. Tavoris Cloud, his opponent, unbeaten, 31 years his junior. I mean, you were just recently in the gym with B-Hop. I mean, at what stage is it time, do you think, for him to step down?
You know what? That pretty much is a question that the athlete himself would need to answer. I actually asked him that question, that exact same question. And then for those of you that don't know Bernard, Bernard's a talker. The moment I began asking him that question, he began talking in the third person. I indicated to him that this question is coming from me. We walk the same walk. And I truly wanted to know, when are you going to call it quits? Right. When is enough enough? Pretty much the answer I got was, when I feel like it.
Yeah.
It wasn't a definite, well, you know, this one may be it. I'm walking a tightrope. I may consider calling it quits after this fight. No.
Well, it's funny because a lot of people, you know, got on Bernard because, you know, the dying wish of his mother was that he stopped fighting. And he promised her he would.
Yep.
But if it's in you, it's in you. And I'm sure that he, you know, had words with his mom at that time and said, hey, Mom, look, I know I made you this promise, but, you know, I can't stop.
Here's the one thing that I tell people all too often. You got to figure like this. As a professional fighter, and you're doing something that you've been doing practically your entire life, to be able to demand a 6-figure or let alone 7-figure payday for an hour's worth of work, there's no job in America that's going to pay you like that unless you're a major corporation owner. If it took Bernard to enter the ring, in a wheelchair
You would.
and he was getting paid that kind of money, he's going to do it. And it only makes sense, in all honesty. If you're getting paid that kind of money to do something that you're well trained in doing, of course the average person would do it.
Well, Charles, this fight coming up, if I'm looking at my numbers correct, it's going to be the 61st fight for Bernard. He's 52-6-2, but in his last 4 fights, he's only had 1 victory in his last 4 fights. And in his last 2 bouts, he actually fought the same guy. He fought Dawson twice. He lost the last match out. And in the match prior to that, some people cried foul because, that was a no decision because of some people say he faked a shoulder injury to get out of that fight. I mean, as an observer, what's your feeling on that?
Well, let's put it like this.
Here's actually the video of that the first fight, in which I think you're going to see Dawson pick him up and throw him down, and that was the impetus for the boxing commission to say no decision. But what was your thought on that fight that night?
I would have liked to have seen if it were going to come down to a victory being given to an individual or the fight actually being stopped, that it would have been a legitimate stoppage. Not to say that this wasn't. Who's to say that Bernard wasn't injured, wasn't hurt? I mean, to most it looks questionable, but who am I to make that judgment call? It was what it was. The fight didn't continue. They did have a rematch, and we all know what the outcome was.
Now, 2 things about that before we move on. The first thing, when Bernard was asked about did he fake it, he goes, hey, MRIs don't lie. And the other thing, as far as the boxing community is concerned, they thought that was the sign right there, that bout, he was on the downside of his career because of the way he was fighting in that match at that time.
The boxing community, at any given point in time, I was on the downside of my career when I lost my first fight, for that matter. So I don't take too much into what another individual places judgment over my career because they have no idea what I'm actually going through personally. The fight itself, again, it could have been a little questionable, but who's to say? He sustained that injury. He came back, he fought again, and we all know what the outcome was. The one detriment that as he does progress forward as a boxer, he's going to always find himself going up against somebody at least 10 years junior to him.
Which is this case because, Cloud is 17 years. All right, thumbs up or thumbs down on B-Hop this weekend?
I'm going to go with the hometown.
That's what I like to hear.
That's just the way I am.
All right, listen. Now, boxing, when I was a kid, and just like you and I talked about this earlier, when I was a kid, the heavyweight boxing and the welterweight boxing division were the 2 star divisions. Obviously, everyone knows about Ali, Frazier, Foreman, Norton, the heavyweights, even going back to Tyson. And in the welterweight division, you go Sugar Ray and Marvelous Marvin. What has happened to boxing? It's not the sport it used to be, as we look at some old footage here.
I wish I could answer that in one word.
Well, don't do it in one word.
I wish I could. I don't know if it's the interest in boxing, the politics in boxing certainly has changed. But boxing as a whole, it's going somewhat downhill. Those days that you're referring to probably will never exist again. The one thing I can credit boxing with having happened is that you're seeing a lot more of minority fighters, those who were being exploited during their careers, now becoming those who, I don't like to say this, become the exploiters.
Right.
And I think that's a good thing for the sport. I'm glad to see these fighters get in position where they're able to call their own shots.
Well, you actually have there's a couple of local guys that that are getting ready. Up-and-comers, Garcia's not an up-and-comer. He's there, but just real quick, let's talk about some local Philly guys that we should be looking for.
Oh, absolutely. Fourth and upcoming right now, we got Danny Garcia, Swift. He's going to be going up against Zab Judah, who's been around the corner quite a few times. It's going to be an interesting match, a good matchup. I'm friends with both of these guys, and I got to go with the home.
Yeah, you always got to go with the home guy.
Oh, absolutely. It's going to be an entertaining fight. For those who have not seen the press conferences, I think Danny Garcia's father is more entertaining than what Danny is as a fighter. You have got to see this guy.
Well, we gotta keep parents out of this. Listen, I know you got other guys, but I want to make sure that we get to 16 years of boxing. You obviously set yourself up for after boxing. What is it that you do today to keep yourself busy?
Well, let's put it like this. After 16 years of grinding it out inside the ring, I wanted to prepare myself formally for me retiring from boxing. And that I did. 2010, Compute to Compete Technologies was formed. And it is a computer consultant company that was formulated. We full service both the personal business and the personal computer user and the small business owner. Compute to Compete has been in business for 3 years. It's doing well, but I'm also looking to grow and expand.
And I was looking at the description you had of your business, and of course, as a good marketing person, to use boxing terminology, knock your competition out.
Absolutely.
Listen, Charles the Hatchet Brewer, folks, a former super middleweight champ of the world. Thanks for joining us. He says thumbs up on B-Hop because he's going to go with the homeboy, and we'll see what happens. We'll talk to you next week just to see if you were right. And because this is a boxing segment, or actually a trivia question this week, is a boxing trivia question. How old was George Foreman when he became the oldest heavyweight champ in history? As usual, we'll have that answer for you coming up a little bit later on in the show. Also coming up, we're going to take you to Fight Night, the WWWA, the Worldwide Wrestling Alliance. We're going to take you behind the scenes. Stay tuned.